Okay, today is Wednesday, June 3rd, 2020, at 3 p.m. We're calling the City of Muskego Board of Review to order. Present is our City Attorney, Jeff Warchel, and for the Assessor, it is Mark Link and...
Nick.
Okay, I didn't know your last name. Okay, thanks. And we'll take roll call. Gary Boysitz is not present. Linda Gurr.
Here.
Jeremy Kyle.
Here.
Henry Posberg.
Here.
And Mara Spring is not present. We do have a quorum of the board present. And the statement of public notice. This meeting was noticed in accordance with the open meeting law. The first order of business is to select a chairperson.
I second.
So Henry nominated, Jeremy second.
And then
Just take a vote.
just take a vote.
Yeah.
Okay. Linda Gurr.
Aye.
Jeremy Kyle.
Yes.
Henry Posberg.
Yes.
Motion passes 3 in favor. And so Linda Gurr will take over the chair of the meeting.
All right, next order of business is to select the vice chair.
Take it, Henry? Okay. I nominate Henry
A second.
Pasbury.
Take a vote.
Linda Gurr.
Aye.
Jeremy Kyle.
Aye.
Henry Posberg.
Aye.
Motion passes 3 in favor.
All right, verification of training requirements.
Yes, I filed that with the Wisconsin Department of Revenue yesterday. 2 of the board members have done training within the last 2 years. I don't think you'll need this, Linda, but I'm just kidding.
Okay. And the next order is to confirm that the city has an ordinance for the confidentiality of income and expense information provided to the assessor.
And yes, that
Yes, we
is,
do, yep.
yes, we do have that ordinance in place.
And then we need to confirm a policy regarding procedure for sworn testimony and sworn telephone testimony and sworn written testimony.
That's also in your,
And that
In your
is later
procedure.
in the,
This is just
That
the
would
general
apply.
policy.
just to confirm that we've got
Right,
it,
right.
right? And that's in your packet, right? Did they get it?
Correct.
yes,
Right.
okay. And also in the packet is a policy regarding the procedure for waiver of board of review training requests.
Yes. And that
Those
is-
are both signed in July of 19.
All right, filing and summary of the annual assessment report by the assessor.
Okay, thank you. Again, Mark Link. And in front of you, you should have a Cliff's packet at the top. Titled Annual Assessor Report, Annual Assessment Report. On the cover page at the top, states my credentials and certification. I've been the statutory assessor since September of 2018. However, I have been involved with the city since the early 1990s in multiple revaluations. In the center section, assessment information. The assessment type is a maintenance year. And there are 4 categories of types of assessment or scopes of work. One is being a maintenance year where we're typically visiting properties that were issued or approved for a building permit, requested a review of their assessment, or discovery on the assessor's office for improvements without a permit or improvements made via research of sales information, and so forth. The other category is called an interim market update, which we did in 2017. It's also called a reval. So the last time that we did the revaluation was in 2017. And under the estimated level of assessment, estimated this year to be 87%. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. And what that means is we were at or near 100% in 2017 after the revaluation There's been no revaluation. The market has increased, in essence, 13% over that 3-year period, if not 1 or 2% more. The other categories of revaluations are a full revaluation, which includes interior inspections of every property. We actually made 2 go-arounds in the city here between 1994 and 2010. It's just not practical to do those anymore for cost purposes. And then the other form of a revaluation is what we call a drive-by or exterior view, where we're curbside from the car, taking a look at making sure that the style of the home is listed correctly, the exterior wall condition, and other economic factors that might impact the value. Likewise, we've made multiple passes through the city over the past years with that. So we feel pretty comfortable, or we felt comfortable in 2017 with the interim market update type of approach. It was actually more of a hybrid where we did some spot checking in the field of some selected neighborhoods where we couldn't figure things out from the office. So again, I anticipate 87%. The final level of assessment or assessment ratio, as it's called as well, that goes on the tax bills is determined by the Department of Revenue. Sometimes we're 1 or 2% difference. They use a different methodology and a different formula to come up with the what they consider to be the overall level of assessment in the municipality. And it's not uncommon for an assessor to feel they're at 87% and the department to come up with a figure of 85 or 89. Pretty common throughout the state. And just to elaborate a little bit more on that, where as the assessor is looking more directly at sales that occurred during the year to see what the assessment was compared to the sale price to come up with an average ratio. The Department of Revenue is looking at the total equalized or full value, as it's called, in a municipality from the previous year. They take a look at what we report as far as sales occurred during that calendar year, and they will apply what's called an economic factor, and they will indicate that we feel, the department feels like the economics in the city of Muskego is a plus 5% or a plus 3%. And it's just different methodologies by 2 different bodies, and again, it's not uncommon to be 2% difference. At the bottom of that page, besides myself, the box allows for 1 entry. I indicated Michael Weimer, who's worked here for several years as well with an Assessor 2 level certification. To my right is Nick DePalma, DEPALMA, who's a property appraiser, played a key part in both 2019 and 2020 as well, participated in the field work, the permit valuation, personal property valuation, and as well as some of the day-to-day contact with property owners. If you were to go to page 3, at the bottom, page number 3, and if you went to section B, item number 1, the assessor's oath of office, the dates listed there for the oath of office. Item number 2, the notice of assessment. Notices of assessment were mailed on May 8th, 2020. And in the unattached pages, the last page should be a sample of the notice of assessment that was sent to property owners this year and received a change in assessment. Should be the very last page of the loose leaf pages.
So you only mail to people with changed assessment?
That's correct, yeah. What the statutory requirements are for property owners whose value changed anything, they need to receive a notice of assessment. There was a change in the law this year actually for agricultural properties. If their value changes $500 or less, they do not need to receive a notice of assessment.
I think it was on the right. It was underneath.
These,
It
okay,
was underneath, yes.
not in the binder.
Not in the-
Correct, in the
Right.
loose leaf, right.
Last parts of those probably,
Very last page.
yeah.
So the notice itself is a state mandated form. The language that's in there is predominantly state language. We did have some additional language in there related to COVID for this year, and requested open books to be conducted by phone and so forth, and everyone was compliant with that. But in essence, what the notice indicates at the top is the date of the notice. At the bottom gives you the prior year's assessment, the current year's assessment, and the dollar amount of change. And you'll see the reason for change. There's a code 02, that's an assessor's code for new construction, and then the text, the reason for the change in value, in this instance, the shed. And it also indicated the preliminary general level of assessment. In the center section, under the general information included, the information on how to contact the assessor during the open book, as well as the open book and board review dates. Item number 3, the affidavit will be signed today, June 3rd. Item number 4, the municipal assessment report, or MAR, will be submitted by Monday, June 18th. And what the municipal assessor's report is, it's a two-part. One is overall within the municipality. The Department of Revenue wants the assessor to explain the difference in value from 2019 to 2020 in this instance. And the multiple reasons for change can include how much of the total dollar change was due to new construction, and that's required by class of property, residential, commercial. How much of the change in value was due to shifts in classification, residential to commercial, commercial to manufacturing, taxable to exempt, exempt to taxable, as well as a couple other categories. The key part of the first part of the MAR is the new construction number, because if you go over a certain percentage, the municipality can set their tax rate higher if they desire, if their overall new construction growth is over a certain percentage. I don't think the city here has been able to reach that. Most municipalities don't annually with the amount of new construction. Then the other important part 2 of the MAR report, is the tax incremental district report, where we confirm the total values within each tax incremental district annually to the Department of Revenue, and they use that for other financial reasons with the city. So those are that's the MAR report. The preliminary report is always required by the second Monday in June. Item number 5, the corrections and omissions. We'll talk about that as one of the agenda items. Under item number 6, open book. The official open book date was May 21st of 2020. However, on the notice, we did indicate that you could contact me directly if you didn't want to wait until May 21st, and the majority of the property owners did call before May 21st. I spoke with 12 individuals, resulted in 7 changes in assessment during the open book. 4 of those 7 changes was from one property owner in the condominium development, where we were a little high on percentage of completion. Revised notices of assessment were mailed May 22nd. Item number 7, the Board of Review date is today, June 3rd. We do not anticipate a date to reschedule, and I am here to defend the assessments if needed. Item number 8, again, will be an item on the agenda that we will discuss. If you went to page 4, under item number 9, the number of field inspected properties this year was 187. That was a combination of interior inspections, exterior walk-around inspections, and drive-by inspections. So the process in a maintenance year is, if a permit is approved for something that would add value to a property, such as a basement finish, kitchen remodel, bathroom remodel, detached garage and so forth. In addition, we sent out a letter to the property owners requesting an interior inspection when needed. And that would be for the interior items, the basement finish, kitchen remodels and so forth that we need to see the inside. The letter asked for property owners to contact us within 14 days to schedule an appointment. There was a law change, I believe this is year 3 now, it might be year 4, where property owners no longer lose their right to appear to the Board of Review if they deny access to the assessor, where they used to lose their right to appeal. So it has led to lesser interior inspections, not only in the city, but we do this all over the state. And there's been a little bit of a drop in the number of interiors that we've been able to get in. When we don't get inside for something that's an interior remodel, we do go to the inspection department, try to confirm what work was completed, if it was completed, and so forth, and make an estimate based off of that. For the exterior visits, detached garages and so forth, if they do not respond to our letter, we will make a cold call, knock on the door to see if they're at home. If they're not, we'll leave a card on the door letting them know we were there, and we might go into the backyard to measure the garage or the deck or the other detached type or exterior type improvements that might be made. All of that is due to the trespass law, and the letter itself, again, is a Department of Revenue, the introduction letter asking them to schedule an appointment with us is a Department of Revenue form letter, and the statutory language is right there in italics in the letter, and it seems to grab people's attention, and they just feel they don't have to do anything. Item number 10, total number of sales in the year, 464. Under item number 11, total reviewed for validity, exclude those auto rejected by the DOR is 464, and the number determined to be valid sales 426, and we inspected 33 sales this year. So as we get into a couple other of the exhibits that are loose leaf, anytime there's a transaction, there was another law change on this 2 years ago, where if it was what was a trustee deed or a quitclaim deed, you might not have to file what's called the e-return in the Department of Revenue system. You do have to do that now. So there's some coding that's required on those real estate transfer returns to indicate whether or not the grantor and grantee are related parties, what type of deed it is, if it's a quitclaim deed and so forth. So there's some coding in there, and that means those are automatically rejected by the Department of Revenue and not sent forward to the assessor to do some type of sales review on those to consider them for valid sales or not. Okay, everyone understand that? That's the auto reject. So of the 464, our sales review process is we have access to all real estate transfer returns. We print those out on a monthly basis, update those and print those out on a monthly basis. And somewhere between 2 and 4 times a year, staggered mailings of all of the properties that sold within a year, we're going to mail them a sales questionnaire. It has 5 or 6 basic questions on it. Was the property listed on the open market? Were the buyer and seller related parties? Have there been any changes made since the property sold? Those are the main items to trigger whether or not it's what we would consider a valid open market sale. In addition to that, monthly we're tracking asking prices as well, so we have a good idea going in. It's in our database that the property was listed on the market for a month, 3 months, 6 months, and so forth. But with that, each return is reviewed for validity to determine whether or not it's a valid open market sale. And here in a little bit, we'll talk about a valid open market sale versus a usable sale for ratio when it's processed through the Department of Revenue. Item number 12, building permits, 387. Total number of those that were field inspected is 187. A good portion of that difference would be properties that didn't reply to the letter requesting an interior, and in speaking with the inspection department, they had no record of a final inspection being completed for a bathroom remodel or a basement remodel and so forth. So without a final inspection by the building inspector, we do not estimate it as being completed. We'll do a follow-up with that property next year, and then if it's still not, then at that point, we might go ahead and add it to the record. So there's a number of properties that were not inspected, either due to the date of the permit. If it's a November or December of 2019 permit in this instance for a large addition or a new house or a new commercial building, it's not going to be completed or started by January 1st of 2020, so no need to necessarily do a full inspection on those properties. And again, the other ones are going to be the ones that the information, they didn't respond and we weren't able to determine whether or not the work was completed on the inside, so there was no inspection completed on those properties. Under item number 13, 78 new construction properties this year. Annually, new construction is always analyzed and it's assessed. The important part is we assess it at the same level, general level of assessment as other properties in the municipality. So typically, if a home was built during 2018 and then sold during 2019, might have sold for $500,000. We're not going to assess it at $500,000. We're going to assess it typically somewhere between 90 and 85% because that's going to be in the general level of assessment, and that's really what the definition of uniformity is from assessments. Item number 14, 320 agricultural properties. We fielded roughly 10 of those this year as an annual process for the ones that are in the gray area. But with our constant and lengthy experience here, we have a pretty good handle of who's actually doing the farming out there and who's not. And any ones that are in question, we do try to do a follow-up, if not annually, biannually. One of the gotchas or loopholes that we as assessor face with the agricultural use law is we can't automatically, and I'll just use a 5-acre piece because there is no limit on the acres. If we have a 5-acre tract that might be renting it out to a farmer for hay for their larger farm, and we go out there a year later and say we don't see any cultivation, any type of activity, we can't automatically take that out of the agricultural use in that following year because sometimes farmers will give the land a year to rest and allow it to lay fallow for 1 year. If that's the occasion, then we do leave that in agricultural use. We'll do a follow-up, and then they're going into agricultural use in that second year. They're now plowing the land or growing hay or whatever the case may be. So it's not an automatic, the year where there's no indication of agricultural use that it automatically gets taken out. It could be fallow again for 1 year. And then even with that, if it's a developmental tract and they leave it fallow and then they leave it fallow for 2 years and then start the development, they don't get the agricultural use penalty at that point either. So there's a couple of loopholes that are in there and a couple of reasons where it might take 2 or 3 years before we make the final determination. This property is no longer being used for an agricultural purpose, we're going to move it out. Item number 15, the Department of Revenue issues the agricultural use rates annually. We have to take those and equate those down in the database, so we're in line with the equated 2020 agricultural use rates. Item number 16, personal property. We mailed the forms out to property owners on January 21st. All forms that were returned are valued. Those that did not submit a return, we did do a drive-by to see if they were still in business, and those that were indicated in business were issued a damage assessment. Under item number 16, the last bullet, you can see the history of the personal property for the last 3 years. And you can see where it's falling off. It falls off for two reasons. Starting with the 2018 assessment year was the first year that machinery, tools, and patterns were exempt from personal property values. It took a couple of years for people to catch on to that, and more business owners were reporting their equipment from one category and moving it into the exempt machinery, tools, and patterns. Previously, nobody cared, to be quite honest, because it was just no matter where you put it in, it's going to be the same value, and it's going to generate a tax bill based off of that. Nothing major, but there has been between 2018 and 2019 some subtle pushes and moves from taxable to the non-taxable machinery, tools, and patterns. But the other part of that is personal property also has to be equated down to the general level of assessment as the real estate. So we might have $10 million in true value personal property reported in 2019 with a level of assessment of 95%, which is going to get us $9,500,000 in personal property assessment. You get the same $10 million reported in 2020, but the level of assessment falls to 87%. So the personal property is $8,700,000 without doing anything. So over the past few years, there's been around a 5 to 6% loss in value just due to equating down to the general level of assessment. Everyone understand that? Item number 17, we'll talk about the sales ratios here in a little bit. Page 5. In the top grid, you'll see your parcel counts for 2020. And under the work activity, you'll see the 4 categories that I mentioned previously, the full revaluation, exterior, inner market update, and review maintenance. And all properties received a review maintenance again this year. Personal property is an annual cycle due to the change in conversion factors that are issued by the Department of Revenue annually on the personal property form. If you can go to page 7. Before we get into the sales, are there any questions on items in pages 1 through 6? So if you could have page 7, and then in the loose leaf materials, there should be at the top one that says in the upper left-hand corner, it's going to have a date 3/16/20. It's going to be a sales ratio grid. Should be the first page, but past the statement of assessment pages. So upper left, it says date 3/16/2020. Center title is 2019 assessment sales ratio analysis. Then the next page, that's loose leaf, has a date of March 18, 2019. And in the header, center header, has 2018 assessment sales ratio analysis. And then the next page is going to be a one-page grid. In the upper left, the first row is going to say 2018 337 sales. So we'll kind of be talking about all 4 of these pages going back and forth.
Just the 3 pages.
We'll be referring to page 7
Oh,
of the
7.
assessor's report,
Okay, thanks.
plus these 3 pages for clarification. Everyone have them? Okay. So, for page reference, the assessor's report, I'll be referring to that page as page 7. And I'll refer to the 3/16/20 date for that page, the 3/18/2019 date for that page, and sales grid for the untitled page. So on page 7, under the current and prior year statistics, you'll see in the residential category, there's 2020 and 2019. And under the year 2020, it states assessment year 2020, data year 2019. So what that means is, for the January 1, 2020 assessment year, sales that occurred during calendar year 2019, what was the ratio of each of those sales for the January 1, 2019 assessment? Okay, so in this grid and in the 3/16/20 page and the 3/18/2019 page, none of these statistics are relating to the January 1, 2020 assessment comparing to sales. And the way this works is, for the 2020 year, you see the 291 sales valid under residential, total assessed value 87 million, total sale price 99 million, moving down, the aggregate ratio, mean ratio, median ratio, and other statistics. The 291 is not the total number of valid sales that occurred in the city during calendar year 2019. That's the number of sales that we, as the assessor, reported to the Department of Revenue as not being only a valid sale, but also use it and consider it for the economics or the sales ratio or level of assessment. So some of the sales that are not considered that might be valid but don't use them for the ratio would be new construction. So as, for example, a property that might have had a building permit in August of 2018 for a new home might have only been 50% complete as of January 1, 2019, so it doesn't have a full assessment. And then it sells in March of 2019, I'll use the $500,000 number again, might sell for $500,000, listed on the open market, valid sale, but the assessment is only $300,000 because it was a partial assessment as of January 1, 2019. That would be a sales ratio of 60%. It's always taking assessment divided by sale to establish the ratio. So if we were to include all of those partial assessment sales in the Department of Revenue analysis, it would artificially inflate the economic, and the Department of Revenue would come back and say your percentage of growth is 20% in 1 year. It seems like I'm exaggerating, but I've been part of coming in and correcting that in other municipalities over the years where all of those sales were reported. The Department of Revenue didn't question it, they just ran with the number and gave a community a plus 14% in 1 year in economics. And on the other extreme, I've seen it a minus 20 on the commercial side for the same reason. So again, it's not the total number of valid sales, it's the number that we consider to be usable for the ratio. Other sales that are valid that we inform the department not to use for the ratio are sales that occurred where the assessment record just isn't current. It could be timing based on a permit for remodeling. Likewise, it isn't on the record yet. It could be when we do our sales research, the basement's been totally refinished, there's no building permit issued, and we don't have it on the record. So we're gonna have, again, a low ratio on that sale because our assessment doesn't include a fully finished basement when the sale price does. So we do a lot of research and weeding out all of those sales to try to have some type of uniform economic applied with the department. So that's the key part of the 31620 and the 318-2019 exhibits. And the way this is supposed to work, if you were to look at the mean ratio or median ratio of the improved residential class on the 2020 analysis, you'll see the ratios of 86, 88.1, and 86.6 under the improved sales residential. And then if you look at the March 18 of 2019, under residential, the mean ratio is 91.56 and the median ratio is 90.36. Everyone see those figures? Typically what the Department of Revenue is going to do is it's going to kind of be their starting point, is looking at the mean and the median improved sales on the residential side. That's going to indicate 4% growth, looking at this year's and last year's, right? The lower ratio means growth. Likewise, they're going to do that with the commercial properties as well. So that's kind of the starting point of what they're going to use. And they're going to use some other information that we might provide as the assessor to indicate what the overall economics is going to be in a given year. This is not the black and white. They don't just simply take those numbers and apply them, but it can be a good indicator of what direction the department is going to go. They do look at the vacant sales, but the vacant sales are a small number of percentage and don't have a whole lot of impact on the overall level. So the 2019 and 2020 pages, this is direct output from what we as the assessor provided to the department in those corresponding years. Any questions on this part of it? Okay. Then if you went to the untitled page, my apologies, forgot the header on that. If you, this is really more of a true, taking the 2020 sales that are valid sales, and this includes those sales that we told the department not to use for ratio purposes because now we have a full assessment on it. It's going to be this page. So starting with the upper grouping, 2018, and that's calendar year 2018, there were 330 sales. These are residential improved sales. Again, the vacant sales and the commercial sales are too small of a number to have a lot of reliability on. So moving across the columns, the sale price, you'll see the total sale price, and then the average and the median sale prices during calendar year 2018. The per above is above grade square footage. The price per square foot. The per total is total living area, and that would include the finished basement living area. So on walkout basements and bi-level homes and tri-level homes, we have that category of finished basement living area. We always, when we're taking a look at the price per square foot, we want to see what's the price per square foot of the above grade living area and make adjustments for the finished basement living area. But we do put this in the grid, the total living area, just for some type of comparison. The above grade area, you'll see the total of those sales, and then the average and the median square footage. FBLA is finished basement living area, the total, average, and median. And again, that's for all of the sales in the pool, and that's for the FBLA square footage only. Then the total square feet of living area, which includes finished basement living area, and then the year bill. If you move down to the 2019 calendar year, 367 sales, so sales were up roughly 9% as far as the number of sales goes in 2019. It's going to be pretty consistent with what you might have seen by regional releases during calendar year 2019. Some of you may or may not follow the market closely, but kind of an unprecedented amount of sales in 2019 that sold for over the asking price. There were some bidding wars that were going on, and 2019 was a pretty hot year in the market. So the 2019, you'll see comparatively there the average sale price was $351 versus $326 in 2018. The average sale per square foot, 187 versus 177 on the above grade square footage. 178 versus 176 on the total, and the above grade and total square foot categories didn't change all that much. So that's another good indicator when you see that the average square feet in the 2019 sales compared to the average square feet in the 2018 sales is within 50 feet. It does indicate that the price change in price per square foot is truly based on the market. It's not due to a large fluctuation in a larger number of small per square foot or small square footage property selling or large square footage property selling. And likewise with the year built being pretty consistent in 2019 with the sales in 2018, again, that would indicate that these higher prices per square foot is truly a change in the market. This does include waterfronts, but there's not enough waterfront sales in this pool to really distort the numbers all that much. So we feel pretty good that overall you'll see the changes there in the 2019 divided by 2018. If we were to look at the average price per square foot of the above grade, 1.05 or 105%. Looking at those statistics, I feel that we're going to be overall about a 6% increase is what I would give the city this year as far as an economics go using this data. So this is, you'll see this on the assessor's report as we get into later. This is one of the ways that you can take a look and try to see what's the overall economics doing in the city from year to year using the price per square foot. But again, you have to be conscious of if you have a disproportionate amount of waterfront sales or if you have a disproportionate amount of new construction sales that are going to inflate things, you do have to just be conscious of those. So just to summarize on the sales part, again, for Department of Revenue purposes, there's valid open market sales that are also to be used for the ratio or economic analysis. And then for local sales studies and analysis sales, there's valid market sales once the data's in there and cleaned up and correct, which is what you're seeing on the sales grid page, the local sales ratio. Everyone understand those? Okay, any questions? Okay. There's some tiny narrative at the bottom of page 7 that kind of lays out what I mentioned verbally. This is a Department of Revenue form, and it doesn't allow for expansion of that particular section. Page 8, valuation summary. In general, what's being asked here, the land values and the cost approach and the market approach for residential properties. How are you deriving at your estimates? Everything is still based again off of the 2017 revaluation. It wouldn't be equitable to start using properties that sold during 2019 as comparative sales for some of the properties, while the rest of the city is based on 2015 and 2016 sales. Correct? If we did that, the sales using 2019 would be at a higher ratio. So in short, what that grid is displaying there is that for the reval, our land values are always derived from the marketplace. The cost manual is Tyler Technologies IS CAMA solution that's been in place for many years here in the city. For residential properties, 90 to 95% of the properties we do use the direct sales comparison approach, and 5 to 10% of the properties are too unique where that approach may not be the best approach, and we'll take a look at other factors such as our regression analysis and or cost approach. For the commercial class properties, roughly 75% of those are derived from the income approach to value using the direct capitalization approach to value. We will take some of the properties and do some type of direct sales comparison grid. Gets a little complicated with commercial properties because you do have to search the county, the state, and it becomes subjective as to what's really comparable and what's not comparable on some of the commercial properties. So we do rely heavily on the income approach. Page 9. At the top, using the sales grid that I just mentioned, looking at those 367 sales and considering the analysis of the price per square foot, as well as additionally comparing sales ratios from year to year, I feel that for 2019, for the assessment year 1120, we're looking at about an overall 6% economic change. The fine print in the grid there was an attempt to try to get the sales grid into that box that didn't fit, but that's what that is. Page 10 gives a listing of the number of residential, commercial, and agricultural vacant land sales that occurred during 2019. Not a whole lot is done with that on an annual basis. The only thing that would trigger a sale in a maintenance year is if we had some type of reduction for a property where it might have had a high negative adjustment for topography, and it went in and was filled and then became sellable as a buildable lot. That might trigger a valuation change. But other than that, these sales that occur in between revaluations are kind of pulled up, and then another analyzation is taking place for the revaluation. In this case, 2021 is our next scheduled reassessment. Page 11. There are 7 classification types. There's actually 8 if you include manufacturing, but locally assessed, there's 7. And under the residential classification, I've given some typical minimum and maximum price per acre. That is for non-water, and that's for buildable acreage or what we call home site acreage. And this again is kind of a typical range. The low end is going to be typically in the outskirts area. We might have a property that's sitting out there built in the 1900s, and we have to do some type of economic disimprovement to the land as well. And then some of the newer areas might be in the 150, upwards of 200,000 in some instances of the 5-acre to 10-acre estate type lands for the home site. From the front foot, typically we're in the $430 to $1,200 per front foot range for non-water, and then I've got the ranges there for the waterfront. The waterfront, we have channel frontage, we have creek frontage, we have primary water frontage, secondary water frontage, and so forth. We have a lot of waterfront categories that we use based on the location, what lake you're on, location, access, and so forth. Agricultural use rates, you see are indicated there, as well as the undeveloped, agricultural forest, productive forest, and what's called the other. So as a reminder, I think you all know this, but as a reminder, agricultural is assessed at use value as opposed to market. By statute, undeveloped land, which used to be called swamp or wasteland, is assessed at 50% of market value by statute. Agricultural forest land is assessed at 50% of market value by statute. Productive forest is market value, and class 7 other is the land and the land to support the buildings and the buildings that are located on a farm site. So in other words, a 40-acre farm has 5 acres to support the house and the outbuildings. The 5 acres would be in the Class 7 other category, valued at market value, and then the remaining 35 acres would be in agricultural use and use value. Page 12. At the top, typical indicators of adjustments for properties going door to door. Topography, location restrictions. At the bottom of page 12, (13), (14), (15), and (16). So at the bottom of page 12 through page 16, what's being asked for on that is looking at the cost approach, the market approach, and the income approach. In short, what did you use and did you verify the tables? So for in the year again of a revaluation, the cost tables are part of the IS World CAMA solution. So are the depreciation tables. We're going to take a look at all the land sales that have occurred, and then having a smaller number of land sales every year, we use a method called allocation and abstraction. Allocation is typically in a subdivision, what does the land contribute to the total sale price? Typically in a subdivision in Muskego, historically, it's 25 to 35% of the total sale price is contributed to the land. That doesn't apply to waterfront, obviously, and it doesn't apply to outskirt acreage properties. So that's the allocation method. The abstraction method is taking the sale price of the property, subtracting from that a typical building value, and that will be what's called a land residual value, an indicator of what the land's contributing there. The issue with the abstraction method is the subjective part of that is if you use too much depreciation on the building, it's going to indicate a high land rate. If you use not enough depreciation on the building, it's going to indicate a lower land rate. So there's really some experience in tweaking that's needed with the abstraction method. We really like the sales approach and the allocation method. They've been tried and proven to be supportive. For the cost approach then, when we're looking at the sales, we're going to take our sale price. We're going to apply what's called a local modifier, changes in a year of revaluation, the depreciation, and we're going to compare what's called the cost approach value to the sale price for all of the sales. That's going to give us a sales ratio. We're going to take a look at the outliers and tweak it from there. Likewise, with the market approach, we use the regression analysis. We use between 26 and 30 variables, and we run that through all sales, and it helps to establish what the individual items are contributing in the marketplace. The example I use often is wood deck. Wood deck might cost $25, $30 per foot to add to your property. You go to resell a property, you might get $8 to $10 per square foot of that deck. That's what the regression approach does. It's really a true market approach to each individual component of the home to allow us to make adjustments for the sales characteristics between those and the subjects. So that's all of that research is completed. We take a look at that regression value compared to all of the sales, the cost approach compared to all of the sales. We run our direct sales comparison approach model against all of the sales. And once it's proven to be accurate and working on the sale properties, the same methodology is applied to the non-sale properties or subject properties. And that's how we come up with the values, and then we start looking at exceptions from there. So it's, again, it's looked at, analyzed, and fully supported by the sales. In your packet, there should have been, in the loose leaf, three spreadsheets. One of them at the top titled Front Foot Sample. acre sample, and waterfront sample. Am I going too long here, or okay, keep going?
Gotta be in session anyway, so.
Yeah.
Just wanted to elaborate a little bit more on the land. I don't know how much we've discussed this over the years. So I've got, again, 3 samples here of the front foot, the acre, and the waterfront. And this is just a sample of what is in our land tables. So what we do is we establish first a neighborhood number. If we look at Fountainwood as an example, that's going to have a unique neighborhood number. We're going to take a look at the overall sale prices in there and what's the allocation of the land in there. That gets assigned to a unique neighborhood number. And then if you went across to the third row where you see L type, land type F on the front foot sample page. Everyone with me there? Okay, so that's indicating the F means it's a front foot model. Moving to the right, the neighborhood model or number is the unique number. And you'll see that there's 4 1 entries there. You can ignore the next 1, 2, 3 columns. And if you went over to the L code, land code column, and you'll see a 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So in our database, we have a what's called the land type. A code 1 is a primary site. A code 2 is a secondary site. A code 3 is a undeveloped or rear site, and then a code 4 is a waterfront. So that's what the 1, 2, 3, 4 means there, and they all have different prices. Then if you move to the right to the B size, which is base size, so in this particular neighborhood, we have a base size of 120 feet, or 120 feet of frontage. Moving to the right, the base rate is $490 per front foot. Moving to the right, the BINCR, that is a base incremental, or what we call an incremental rate of $130 per front foot. And then to the right of that, the decrease is $240. So what that tells us is in this neighborhood, if you're in the neighborhood model 1, and you have a land code of 1 for a regular lot or primary lot, each lot has its own lot size based on the amount of frontage it has and depth and so forth. So in this neighborhood, you're going to take on each parcel, you're going to take the first 120 feet and value it at $490 per front foot. Okay. Then what the incremental rate is the price for the frontage that's over 120 feet on an individual parcel. So if we had a parcel in this neighborhood that had 150 feet of frontage, it's going to price the first 120 feet at $490 per front foot. And then the next 30 feet is going to be priced at $130 a front foot, because you don't get the dollar for dollar in the marketplace if you have the extra 30 feet. You just don't get the dollar for dollar per foot on the existing homes. Okay, everyone get that? Likewise, the decrease in value is about half of what the base rate is. So in this particular neighborhood, if we have a smaller lot that's only 90 feet instead of 120 feet, we're only taking away $240 of that $490, not the full $490. So it starts with what we feel anyway is a fairly uniform starting point in the subdivision to identify the lots, a base value. From there, a depth factor gets applied to each lot based on its depth. A lot that's 150 feet might have a factor of 1.0, and a lot that's 200 feet might have a factor of 1.11, because the depth doesn't contribute as much as the width historically. So I just want to give you a broad view anyway. This is actually 400 or 500 pages, or 400, 500 rows in the database. But in each neighborhood gets assigned to a particular lot model, which goes to a table like this to establish what's the base size in that area, what's the base rate, and then what we call the incremental decremental rate. Okay, everyone understand the concept anyway? The acre table, acre sample, works the same. If you went to the second row, or the LP mod number 2 on the left-hand side. So under the land code in the center, the L code 1, that's our code for a home site. So in this neighborhood, the base size is 1 acre. Price the first acre at $89,000 for that home site. And then if it's over an acre, the additional acres also gets assigned $89,000 per acre if it has a code 1. These other codes that are in here mean multiple things. The code 2, 21, 22, 23, and 3, those are all agricultural codes. Code 4 is a forest land. Code 5 is the undeveloped or swamp land. And code 6 is a primary site for developmental land if it's applicable. Code 7 is a secondary acreage. And code 8 is what we call a residual rate. So on a 5 acre tract, we might have in our database 1 acre with a code 1. That's going to trigger an $89,000 value. And then the remaining 4 acres of that 5 acre tract, we would have a code 8 and value the remaining 4 acres at $13,000 per acre because it's excess land, it's not developable land. So in that example, a 5 acre tract in this neighborhood is going to price 1 acre at $89,000, and then the additional 4 acres at $13,000 per acre for $52,000 to give an overall value of $141,000 for that 5 acre piece. Okay, everyone understand the concept there? Okay. Then we have the waterfront sample. And again, we have multiple waterfront codes based on channel, creek, whether it's Bass Bay, Big Muskego, Danoon, Muskego, and so forth. But if you look at the top row, because it's primarily what's used for Big Muskego and Danoon, you'll see the L code is a 4. That's the code for waterfront. And our base size is 50 feet, and the base rate is $4,550 per front foot. And then you'll see the incremental and decremental rate there, okay? There's some fluctuation there around the lake depending on some different lot sizes, and the different lakes might have some different standard frontage. But we've established this over the years. And again, it's going to establish a base rate, and then from there we're going to apply the unique influence factors for individual properties that might be fronting a busy street, might be backing a pond that's not really waterfront, might be backing the golf course that would be a positive influence. So the individual influence factors get applied to parcels, but it's a pretty good starting point to apply the mass appraisal lane approach throughout the city. I'm nearly concluding. The last 2 pages that you have there, actually, when I say 2 pages, they're two-sided. One of them at the top is going to say summary of assessment year 2020, and summary of statement of assessment year 2019 is the other one. So everyone have those, and it's just there for illustration. You'll see in 2020 for the total local real estate at the top, $2.962 billion. In 2019, the local real estate was $2.925 billion. And in 2020, the personal property is in the just above center there. The 2020 personal property is $7.825 million. 2019 was $8.821 million. And then center right-hand portion of both pages You'll see in 2020, the locally assessed, which does not include manufacturing value, is 2.97 billion, and in 2019 was 2.933 billion. So that's roughly $37 million change in value that's due to new construction and shifts in classification to and from manufacturing and to and from museum. That's not the dollar amount of economic growth, that's just truly the amount of assessment change based on those changes in characteristics for properties. That's all I have. Thank you for your patience.
Any questions?
What's the 91 referrals? Went from 0 referrals to 91. 2019 to 2020.
Referrals are, it's what we call, it's also called an assessed with. So if we had subdivision A, when the subdivision is developed, it might have 75 parcels in it. But of those 75 parcels, there's 5 outlots for either green space, detention ponds, retention ponds, whatever the case may be. So 75 lots, 5 of those are outlots. And each of those outlots has an undivided interest, or the 70 owners have an undivided interest in those 5 outlots. We assign 0 value to those outlots, and those are called referral or assessed with. They're considered in the assessment of the individual parcels within the subdivision.
All right. This time, we need the receipt of the assessment roll and sworn affidavit.
And I'll go ahead and sign the affidavit and walk it over to the clerk.
Thanks.
All right. The assessment roll and sworn affidavit has been received by the clerk. At this time, we should establish procedures for operation, even though we currently do not have any objections. But just to talk about how we want to do it, if we get a late objection, we approve. In the past, we've heard the taxpayer, and at the end of the evening, we've done the deliberations. I don't know if we want to continue with that, if we get any taxpayers that,
So kind of collect, if there's 3 of them, collect the info from them, and then after.
and then deliberate at the end of the evening, as opposed to if you deliberate
Okay.
after each one. We can go either way, do we? At the end of the evening?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
Either
there
you
are
go.
any
There's
objections.
no rhyme or reason to it, it's up to you.
Yeah. It just always seemed to make it go a little faster, you didn't have everybody sit, everybody backing up, sitting, you
Right.
know.
Exactly.
Clear and back and forth.
And then the examination, correction of errors, and certification of corrections. I think that's just a review of the assessment rule.
I think Mark
Mark
may
will
have
do
some.
that.
You have
There's
that.
a doc.
I have one exhibit. If I could read in at the top, it says 2019 corrections and omitted for 2020 board review. We have 2 correction of errors for personal property and 1 omitted real estate. The first personal property correction of error is account number J038, Jimmy's Express Car Wash. The 2019 assessment was $71,170. Moving to the right, the corrected 2019 personal property should be 0. They were out of business. It was actually brought to our attention last year, and we discussed it last year, and I really don't have an explanation as how it remained on the county roll. Below that is the Perfect Pick collectibles. And that was assessed at $8,280. I actually went out and drove that one myself last year and saw the signage, and they still had some stuff in their picture window here, and so we went ahead and assigned them a doomage value, and then they contacted the clerk's office or finance director to let them know that they were actually out of business. So they were out of business as of 1/1/19, and would ask the board to accept those two corrections to the 2019 assessment roll and have those removed from the 2019 assessment roll. At the bottom, real estate parcel number 225-999-010, Saranac Development LLC. It's located at South 82 West 19246 Apollo Drive. This was a shift in classification for the January 1, 2019 assessment roll. The normal process when a property is either being declared manufacturing by the department or being declared that they're taking it out of manufacturing and moving it to local assessed is they notify the assessor's office. Not sure what occurred here, but I've searched all email avenues and couldn't find anything, couldn't find paper form, and our assessor here at the time since retired, and the Department of Revenue person at the time retired, so it is what it is. I did speak with the owner, and he's aware of it. So we didn't have it on last year's roll, and we asked the board to accept the assessed value of omitted property of $192,100, $725,917,100, and add that to the 2019 assessment roll. That's all I have for corrections.
All right.
So it from manufacturing to commercial?
It's locally assessed now, correct?
Okay, gotcha.
Are those on the roll, Mark, or do those have to be corrected?
These properties are on the two personal property accounts are not on the 2020
Are not,
roll.
they're, okay,
This property is on the 2020 roll. The real estate parcel is on the 2020 roll. There needs to be a correction process as an omitted property
for 2019,
for 2019, correct?
okay.
Do we need to vote on that or just accept it?
I think you should vote on it.
All right.
So do you want to make a motion or just vote, or should I just?
I guess you can do
I
a
saw the
motion.
typo. I'm sorry.
So what was the motion now to,
To
Should we do
ex-
two different ones?
I take that as shied anyway.
Sorry.
so,
So these are not on the roll, the
I'm
personal
sorry.
properties are not on the 2019 roll,
The
personal properties.
personal property accounts are listed on the 2019 assessment roll with those values that you see in the 2019 original PP value.
okay,
Oh, okay,
Okay. So the 2019 roll needs to be corrected to 0 with a marginal note,
okay,
70.43 correction. Likewise with the real estate parcel, a correction to the 2019 roll with a marginal note, 7044 omitted property correction.
so rather to restate that, I think your motion is basically what Mark just said.
I'll second.
I can't motion though.
Great.
Oh,
So
sorry, who,
I'll make
oh.
a motion to accept
okay,
the
And I'll accept
explanation.
Jeremy
Second.
seconds. Now you can take a vote.
And we're voting on both areas, the correction.
All three.
Yes.
All three. Okay.
Linda Gurr,
Yes.
Jeremy Kyle,
Yes.
Henry Posbrick.
Yes.
Motion carries 3 in favor.
And I don't believe we have any waivers to consider for late objectors or.
Correct, we do not,
No, there's none.
not Not as of
So the
now.
only thing we have to consider is the request by Walmart to, the waiver to not be heard today, but to be heard by telephone? Or-
Actually, to just waive it so
Waive
that
the appearance.
they can go to circuit court if they
Okay.
want.
So we'll need a,
Well, I can kind of give you a little history maybe.
I think you know the history.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, just so you know, they sued the city for 2019. That case hasn't been settled yet. So you waived last year.
Right.
They sued us. That case is still in the process of being either tried or settled. It's in the court. And they're going to basically do the same thing for 2020. If you waive it, I'm 90% sure or more, they'll sue us then in the upcoming months for 2020. Then those two cases will be combined in circuit court and it'll be a determination as to, which is similar to what happened for 17-18. Now they're doing it for 19-20. So
Okay.
that's kind of the background of where it's going.
Okay.
Now, if you if you didn't waive it, then they're asking for their appearance to be by telephone
Okay.
for when it gets heard.
All right, so then we need a motion to waive.
Correct.
Move to waive
And
the,
I know you don't have any objection.
No objections.
Okay.
Move to waive the appearance by Walmart Real Estate Business Trust.
I'll second.
Do you wanna
They'll do a
call
vote.
a vote?
Linda Kerr,
Yes, to waive.
Jeremy Kyle,
Yes.
Henry Posbrick.
Yes.
There are 3 in favor. And then this needs to be signed. Let's get it signed so we don't forget.
Oh,
By the
yeah.
chairperson.
Let me point that out. They're on their request for waiver. Their attorney made a mistake and he signed it where it's supposed to be signed by the chairperson. He was supposed to sign above. So my thought would be the chair could just sign next to him and maybe we make a little line that he was supposed to sign there. So just so that we're on the record that's why it's on there.
Okay,
Did we sign this one?
Yes, that's the original.
That's the original. Okay.
so I just sign next to it?
I would sign next to him and then maybe make a little mark, an arrow pointing up that you can see where he was supposed to
Like
sign.
there.
Yeah, yeah,
So we like an arrow from there to there.
Oh,
right.
to there,
Just
okay.
that he's supposed to sign up there. Okay, thank
Do you
you.
need dates on there?
Did we date it? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Right next to it. Oops, I'm moving my table away now.
Starting to put the whole year on because
Yeah.
I know, I do the same thing now.
we just,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, so where are you now? You're at
Uh,
review the assessment roll.
Yep.
So we have no hearings on property assessments, so at this time, the board will stay in session to review the assessment rolls.
Correct.
And you want us to go off the record?
Please go up.
Okay, we are back on the record, Madam Chair.
The board of review has completed reviewing the rolls for the year. And there's no additional business. So at this time, we need a motion that the board of review approve the 2020 assessment roll as presented by the assessor, and having performed all of its statutory duties and completed all of its work that came before the board of review adjourns sine die, subject to the clerk fulfilling the statutory duties.
I saw a second.
We need a
I'll
motion.
make a motion.
Maybe a second.
You want to do a roll?
Linda Kerr,
Yes.
Jeremy Kyle,
Yes.
Henry Posbrick.
Yes.
There are 3 in favor. Motion carries.
Board of review is
Adjourned.